Welcome to the Explainer. You know, when an extreme weather event hits, you think about the obvious dangers, right? The wind, the water. But today, we're diving into a report that investigates a whole different kind of storm. A storm of disinformation that follows right in its wake. And it's changing everything. The report kicks off with this really stark warning from the Atlantic. And it kind of sets the stage, you know? This isn't just about bad weather. We're talking about a fight over what's even real anymore. And that really gets to the heart of what we're exploring today, based on this Seeding the Storm report. It's all about how these stories get deliberately twisted, to create chaos and doubt right when we're at our most vulnerable. All right, so let's get into it. Let's look at what exactly this report dug into. It's a really fascinating case study, and honestly, the conclusions are pretty alarming. So what the authors did is they looked at two major storms in New Zealand. The first was Cyclone Gabrielle back in 2023. And for the second, they projected a hypothetical storm, which they call Cyclone Vaianu, in 2026. And by doing this, they could really track how the whole disinformation game has evolved over time. And this is the report's big takeaway, right? It's not that the storms themselves got worse, it's the conspiracy machine that got better. We're talking just 3 years, and what was once on the fringes of the internet is now popping up in mainstream conversations. And that completely changes how we even process these disasters. So how does this actually work? How does a lie get started and spread? Let's zoom in on that 2023 cyclone to really dissect the anatomy of a hoax. Okay, now this is really interesting. This chart basically maps out the life cycle of a fake story over 4 weeks. You can literally see the different phases from planting the seeds of a conspiracy theory before the storm even makes landfall, all the way to blowing it up into this massive, damaging hoax about mass casualties. And this timeline, it just shows you how calculated the whole process is. It's not random. First, they mock the warnings. Then they pivot to this performative aid work to look like the good guys and earn trust. And once they have that trust, bam, the wild claims start flying. We go from rumors of concealed deaths to these grand conspiracies about secret energy weapons. And all of this happens in just a couple of weeks. It's incredibly fast. And the report has a name for this tactic, love bombing. And it's a really calculated strategy. Think about it. You show up with help when people are at their absolute lowest. You build this incredible credibility. But then, that credibility is used as a weapon, right? It becomes the perfect delivery system for spreading distrust in official sources and pulling these vulnerable people into their own little world. But who's actually creating and spreading all this stuff? Because it's not just a few random people tweeting. No, the report maps out this whole complex and surprisingly sophisticated system. So when you first look at this diagram, it's a lot. It looks like this tangled, chaotic web, right? But the report does a great job of making sense of it by breaking the whole machine down into 3 key roles that all work together. And this just illustrates the whole machine perfectly. First, you've got your originators. These are the folks actually cooking up the fake news. Then you have the amplifiers. Think of them as the turbochargers, blasting it out far and wide, often on platforms like Telegram. And finally, you get the translators, who are clever enough to repackage the content for different platforms, like turning some obscure post into a viral Twitter thread. And what this means is the system is incredibly tough to shut down. You take out one piece, and the others just pick up the slack. Okay, so let's get into how these tactics actually changed between that 2023 storm and the projected one in 2026. Because according to the report, the playbook didn't just stay the same. It got different. What the report finds is this huge shift. They call it moving from old denial to new denial. Old denial was all about the wild stuff, right? The storm was engineered with secret government weapons, that kind of thing. But new denial is way more subtle. It doesn't need a crazy conspiracy. It just downplays the storm, calls it a nothing burger, dismisses the warnings as fear porn, and then attacks any proposed solution as some kind of ideological plot. So where is all this new language coming from? Well, the analysis in the report makes a pretty direct connection. It says the vocabulary of denial has been, and this is their term, MAGified. It's basically importing the exact phrases and buzzwords from the US culture wars. Words like woke, fear porn, Wefland grab, these are now being used to frame climate events and just completely undermine any official response. And here's the really crucial point. This isn't about the fringe just getting louder. According to the report, it's about the center, the mainstream, moving to meet the fringe. This kind of language is now being used by more mainstream figures, even elected officials, and it's just completely blurring the lines between what's fringe and what's not. So all of this leads to the report's final, ultimate warning. And it's about the long-term damage of this shift. We're not just talking about arguments on the internet anymore. We're talking about our fundamental ability to function as a society. The report uses a specific term for the overall effect of all these strategies: truth decay. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the slow, steady erosion of the value we put on actual facts, on data, on reality in our public conversations. And the report's conclusion here is pretty stark. It talks about the erosion of our shared epistemic ground, which is just a fancy way of saying the basic set of facts we can all agree on. And as that ground crumbles away, it finds New Zealand is in a much, much worse place. I mean, if we can't even agree on the basic facts of a situation, how can we possibly have a real debate or, solve big collective problems? And that is the final, really challenging question the report leaves us hanging with. It's not just about cleaning up after the last storm. It's about getting ready for the next one. Because if we can no longer agree on what's real, how in the world can we prepare for what's coming next?